Hey everybody, in this video we're going to learn how to calculate percentiles in Excel. And so I've got the formulas over here that I'm going to need to reference. And I've got some examples where I'm going to find a value for a given percentile. And then down here where I find the percentile for a given value. Now, first thing I want to do is figure out what my sample size is, because I need that in both of these formulas. So if I look at my list, looks like I have 29 values in the set. So I'm going to put in the 29 there. And then for this first one, I'm going to be calculating the 40th percentile, and that starts by calculating the index. Now the index is not my final answer. That one tells me which value in the list is going to be my answer. So for instance, if I get an index of 5, then the 5th number in the list will be my answer. So let's see what we get for a percentile 40. So I go in here, equals, since I'm doing a calculation, K is 40, divided by 100 times, and I need parentheses just like the formula, and then the sample size plus 1. Now I could have just typed in 30 down there instead of doing that calculation, but I want to be able to copy this over to other cells, and so I'm going to show you how we do that. Okay, so I got exactly 12 for the index, so I go to the 12th number on the list, and I get a value of 37. So the 40th percentile, or P40, is 37. Okay, so now I want to calculate the 78th percentile for this list. And I don't want to have to retype all of that formula that I just did, so I am just going to copy this one over. So I grab the green square at the bottom right corner and drag it, and I get a value. That value seems a little off for this set, so let's look at what happened. Okay, if I look at what's being called, well, it didn't take the sample size. It didn't freeze that cell. And so if I want to go back and freeze that cell, I can go back to my original calculation. And where that D3 is, I'm going to put a $sign before and after the D. And now when I drag over to copy that cell over, it gives me the right value with the right cells being called. So it just froze that one cell rather than moving it over like it did with the 78. So I have a value of 23.4. Well, last time I had a nice integer value here. Now I have a decimal. And so how I deal with that is I round that value down. And so I get 23 if I round it down. And I round it up. So I get 24 if I round it up. And so I'm going to go to the 23rd and 24th value on the list. And I'm going to take the average of the two. And that will be my final answer. This is what I do every time I get a decimal for the index. And hey, I'm in Excel, so I can use the average or mean function here. And I'm just going to highlight the 23rd and 24th value in the list. And I get a value of 70 for the 78th percentile. And now for these last two examples, now we're given a value in the list. So the first one is 30. And we want to figure out what percentile is that for the list. Okay, so now the X in this formula is the number of values that are less than our given value. So if I look, I have 7 values less than 30. And Y is the number of times our 30 shows up in the list. And well, it only shows up the one time, so this is going to be 1. Now I have everything I need to calculate this formula. So equals, I need parentheses around everything in the top of this fraction, and then X plus 0.5 times Y. Close those parentheses, divided by N all the way up here. And I want to freeze that cell, so I can just copy everything over for my second example. So I'm going to put the $signs before and after the D. And then times 100. And I get a percentile of 26. So P26 equals 30. Okay, so our last example here is for 58. So if I look, 58 down here is the 19th one on the list, so there are 18 values less than it. And 58 only shows up once in the list, so y is 1 again. And now I can just copy this over to calculate that same formula, and I get a value of 64 for the percentile. So P64 is 58.